Well, let's move on to 2011. So what was going on in 2011? Well, I had been hired by Shaw in 2008 to be the corporate controller, or be the controller for the Plant Vogtle project, nuclear project in South Carolina. I had moved over to being the controller for the STP project, which is going to put two nuclear units in South Texas. In the tsunami took out the Fukushima Daiichi 1 through 6, and TEPCO, which is an investor in that project, didn't have 3 or 4 thousand or $3 or $4 million they didn't have other plans for. So we lost 30% of our $12 billion budget, and then the project collapsed. And so I went to traveling. And so in 2011, from April to about September, I was going back and forth to Boston every week from Dallas, because that's what I was doing in my job. And so there's a lot of travel involved in that. And as I'm looking back through the 2011 stuff, I was trying to find the high points, or the things that that made a difference, or that I remember about 2011 that I could communicate to you as I make these videos. And one of the things that I noticed when I was looking at the travel map was that in 2011, in June of 2011, I'd gone to Vegas, and I couldn't figure out why I'd at first blush that I'd gone to Vegas, because I was traveling back and forth to Boston, and then all of a sudden there was this trip to Vegas. Then I remembered Brian Washburn, who was my partner in high school, or in college, and he's been a friend for 40 years. His wife and a couple of their friends, and Cindy and I, went out to Las Vegas in June of 2011. And just as I was putting together the notes that I was going to have to talk about what I remembered from 2011, and I had noticed that Brian called me. So right before I did this video, I was talking to Brian Washburn, who's been a great friend for 40 years. And we talked about that Cindy was ready to go to Las Vegas. I said, go to Vegas, and she's all on board. And that's one of the things that I remember about 2011, is when Cindy says, let's go, she ain't just whistling jingle bells. In 2011, we went to Vegas. We went to New Orleans. I may have some pictures on some of that. I'll drop it in the video. Went to Josh's graduation in Aiken, South Carolina. We went to, I was going back and forth to Boston, and in 2011, my nephew and my family, mom and Jim and Danny and Susan and Brian and Stacy and Benjamin went down to Florida. And so we joined them in Florida, and I got to go to Hulbert Field, and there'll be some pictures about that. But this is what happened in 2011 that was memorable. And I made notes, because there's a lot of this stuff that I just want to make sure I hit the high points. The first thing that I remember about 2011 is 2011 was when I found I had a daughter. Up until then, while Elena was my daughter, I didn't realize that she was my daughter, and was my daughter in a very unique and great way. You know, I had boys, and we've got boys, and boys are easy. They got two moving parts, their mouth and their butt, and they're interchangeable, and you can smack them in either one. But starting in 2011, cheerleading and cheer competitions became a big part of what we do. And in 2011, we went to the World's competition, and Elena's team came in third. They were the bronze champions. And Elena was going to have to fly back to Dallas, and Cindy had to fly back early, and I was driving back and forth from Charlotte. So I was uncomfortable leaving Elena with some friends to take her to the airport. I wanted to be at the airport when she got on the airplane, because if they'd had a mechanical or whatever and the airplane didn't get off, I'd rather have somebody there for Elena. So at the end of April, first part of May in 2011, Elena and I spent the day together at Disney World, because we had some stuff, we had time to kill. So we went and did the highlights. We went and rode some roller coasters and went and did some things. And one of the things that we did is we went to find a place to get a henna tattoo. We'd gotten henna tattoos the summer before when we were down in Mexico, and we were going to get a henna tattoo to kind of commemorate the world's victory, and third in the world in cheerleading. Side note on cheerleading, this is a big dang deal. People all over the country, if I mentioned cheerleading and they found out that my daughter cheered for Spirit of Texas or Cheer Athletics, the two gyms that she's in, they would go, oh, your daughter cheers for, I mean, she was big time competitive cheer. So we decided that we were going to go out, and we ran through the parks and went here and there. And the only place that we found that did henna tattoos was the Morocco Pavilion in Epcot. So we went to Epcot and we got a henna tattoo. But the henna tattoo lady at Epcot was Moroccan, and she only knew how to do worm writing. So the tattoos that she got were worm writing tattoos. And here's a picture of the tattoos we got. And we got matching tattoos on the inside of our arms. And it was in Arabic, and it was Jaguars, which was her team. So we had the Jaguar team, and we were running around Disney. And we get in the car and head for the airport. And we hadn't been listening to the news or anything else. And we got to the airport and found out that that was the day that Osama bin Laden got popped. And so we're about to go through the airport security with Arabic written on our arms. We were a little nervous about that. But that was the first time that Elena and I had spent time together and spent time together alone. And it turns out that I had a daughter. In the same way that Jim Busby and I are father and son by mutual agreement, Elena and I became father and daughter by mutual agreement. Now, Elena had always been a big fan of mine, and I appreciated that. But that's the first day we spent time together, and the first time I found out that I really had a daughter. And here's another picture of a dress that we were on the way to the beach, and this is a prom dress that she almost got. She almost got a camouflage formal for herself. And this is when you got a daughter that wants a camouflaged formal. You know you're pretty close. And then I'll drop a video in here of a day that she flew out to Charlotte before Cindy came out and spent a day or 2 days with me in Charlotte. And one of the things that she had never done was shoot a gun. So I took her to the range. Good shot. Good squeeze, you just got a little low. There you go. Squeeze it. That's good. You're pulling a little bit. You're anticipating a little bit. There you go. It's just a heavy gun for you. Okay, run your target in. All right, turn around and smile. Between camouflage dresses and worm writing on the arm and spending time together, 2011 was when I found out that I had a daughter and she accepted me as a dad. That was one of the high points of 2011. Then there's another picture in 2011. The turkey trot, which was like a scavenger hunt that her school did. Her mom and I dressed up, and here's a picture of us dressed up in November of 2011, and the parents would dress up and go hide someplace, and the kids would have to come find them. And she made eye contact with me and didn't recognize us, and because that's the way we were dressed for that turkey trot. It was a good year for me and Elena. That's when we bonded. Next thing I found out in 2011 is that I have a nephew. We'd gone to Ben and Stacy's wedding the year before, and I'd not spent a lot of time around Ben when he was younger. We would go down to Savannah every now and then and see him, but I hadn't spent a lot of time with Ben. And on this day that the family had gone down to Florida, and Cindy said, well, we need to go, and we'd jump on an airplane and we'd go to Florida. Ben and Danny and Jim and I went around driving around South Florida to all the aviation stuff because it was an aviation thing. And because Ben was active duty, we got to go at Holbert Field, which is the Air Force Special Operations place. And they have a bunch of static displays. We went to the Air Force Armaments Museum. I got to see planes that I had never seen before. And it was the first time that I had spent time around Ben and Stacy, which, as we go through the years, you'll see that that was the first time that Ben and I spent a lot of time together. And I found out that I got a nephew, and hell, I even like him. And his wife's even cooler than he is. So 2011 was when Ben and Stacy and Cindy and I started hanging around together and finding things to do and finding out that we really enjoyed each other. Although if you ask Ben, he doesn't know why he likes us, because we're extroverts. We also had a trip down to New Orleans in 2011. Cindy and I went down to New Orleans, and I think I've got some pictures of that. We had a trip to New Orleans. But the last thing that I found out in 2011 that I didn't know is that I really like the beach, because the way Cindy does the beach is we go put a pop-up shelter on the beach and get up in the morning, have breakfast, and then go sit by the ocean all day until it gets about dark, and then go have dinner, and then the next day we do it again. And that was the first beach trip that we took. That was the first time that I had been to the beach that I actually enjoyed the beach, and I enjoyed the way she does the beach. Although between the beach trip and the trip over to Las Vegas, I found out that maybe I need to calm down a little bit. When we get back from those trips, I'd take my liver to the hospital to get an estimate. So in 2011, I found a nephew. I got to spend time with my wife going someplace whenever we just decided to take a wild hare to go to Las Vegas or Florida. Found out I had a daughter, found out I had a nephew. So 2011 was before the pictures really started in earnest, so there aren't as many pictures for 2011 as there are in subsequent years. But 2011 was the first full year that we had together, and full year that we had together as a family. And going back to what I've said before, found out I had a family again. And if my family was getting together, my wife's going to make sure we went there. 2011, second year, it was a good one.